Pastor Paul had been advised by his doctor that he needed to lose about 30 pounds or risk some serious health consequences. So the good pastor took his new diet seriously, even changing his driving route to the church building to avoid his favorite bakery. One morning, though, however, he arrived for Bible study carrying a gigantic devil's food cake. And the class chuckled and chided him, but the good pastor's smile remained cherubic. "This is a very special cake," he explained. "I accidentally drove by the bakery this morning, and there in the window were a host of goodies. I felt this was no accident, so I prayed, 'Lord, if you want me to have one of those delicious cakes, let me have a parking place directly in front of the bakery.' And sure enough," he continued, "the 8th time around the block, there it was." Yeah, I can relate to that. Can you relate to that? Hi, everybody. So good to see you this morning. So this is our second week as we delve into this book called Living Originally, written by one of my dearest teachers at Unity, Robert Brummett. And so a little review from last week as we looked at what does living originally really mean. Living originally means that we live consciously from our knowing of the truth of what we are. The truth of what we are meaning we live consciously from knowing that we are precious, divine, whole, amazing beings. Now, how easy is that? Yeah. So, he talks about that it's not always that easy for us to remember that. It's not always easy because of how we've been conditioned in life. I think it's safe to say that as I look out, we're all adults and we've all been told things that are just simply not true about ourselves, that we've believed. And so the opportunity that we have, Robert Brummett says, is that in this exploration called Let's Live Originally, what we get to do is to look at what we need to let go of. What do we need to let go of? Because in that letting go is transformation. And transformation is what needs to take place in order for us to truly allow our divinity to be our true north. Yeah. And so sometimes I notice when we talk about this, it feels like, that feels really big. But as Jim Song reflected and in the Daily Word, the Apostle Paul talked about, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The renewing of your mind. Many of you know that a couple weeks ago, I went home to Charlotte to see my mama. And she is in a nursing facility. And so I was visiting her, and I went down the hall to the kitchen area, and there was a pastor sitting across from a resident talking. And he was talking loudly enough where we all could hear, so it wasn't a private conversation. And so my ears kind of perked up when I heard the words salvation and born again. I'm like, and so I started to listen, and he was talking to this person about salvation and what it took to be saved, and that, she needed to be born again, born anew. And I got to tell you, when I used to hear that, it used to just be like, kind of nails on a chalkboard. And I've moved through that to be able to put on my translator hat. And I thought how perfectly that I overheard this conversation, given that we're talking about living originally and being transformed. Because, folks, we can translate this. There's a lot of truth in this. Okay, let's dig in a little. All right. So, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Be born, our thoughts get to be born anew, born in the awareness of the truth of what we are. And really, we don't need to be saved from anything. Although sometimes it feels good. My thoughts can be a scary movie. I don't know if you can relate to that, but sometimes I feel like I need to save myself from that. But yeah. So I started to really take to heart what this minister was saying. And that in order for us to transform, in order for us to change our form of thinking, change our form of believing, we get to be born into a new awareness of the truth of what we are. And it's a conscious choosing. And so many of you know that I love Discover the Power Within You, the book by Eric Butterworth, and I've taught that class out at Unity Village for 6 years. And so I thought, I remember Eric Butterworth spoke to this exactly, and I want to share that quote with you. He said, "We must be born anew if we are going to achieve a meaningful realization of our own divinity. Don't delude yourself. There is only one way that you can release your potential. You must be changed. You must be born anew." You must be born anew. See, a transformed life is just a life where we radically shift our perspective. And our life takes on new meaning and new purpose. And the thing is, too, it's an inner job. Transformation is an inside job. And the outer world can support us in that, but all change happens here. And so Robert Brummett talks about what happens in transformation, and I wanted to share that with you. Everyone's transformation expresses differently, yet there are some things in common. There's an increased sense of freedom and purpose and fearlessness. Let's say yes to that. One's identity shifts from being an isolated, separate feeling self to oneness, to feeling connected to others and ourselves. We have a heightened sensitivity and compassion toward all. Our sense of self becomes strong in that we're no longer defined by the outer world and its expectations and values, but from what we know we are authentically. We surrender the ego's stronghold. I'd like to have some of that. And we call forth and allow our unfolding as divine beings to occur because it's become a priority in our lives. And we are awake to the beauty, wonder, and fullness of living. Yeah, how does that sound? And folks, it's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. And that's why, again, I'm a big fan of spiritual community. Because spiritual community is the place where we can come and we can support each other on our transformational journey. And he makes this distinction too. He makes a distinction between transformational tools and teachings and translational tools and teachings. And if you've been in the book study, you know what I'm talking about. Translational are when you go in the Barnes & Noble and you go to the largest section called self-help. And there's not a thing wrong with translational teachings and tools, not one thing. But Robert Brummett makes this distinction that when you go and you buy a book about, like the pastor, the diet, or investigating something that's going to make our lives a little bit easier, provide a little bit of comfort, that's a fine thing. But there's a difference between that and transformation, because transformation, we go to the source. We go deeper. And we look at how we can allow ourselves to shift the beliefs that have created whatever it is that's out picturing in our life that is not the truth of what we are. That's what transformation is. And so that's what we're saying yes to. Woohoo! Are you with me? Because, folks, it can sound really heavy and really big. But the thing is, I think every single time we change our mind, we're transforming. Every single time that we live into more fully the beauty and the wonder that we are. And again, what comes to my heart is Keisha. You know, she is saying yes, and this is edgy. She's moving to New York City. This is a huge thing. But you know what I am holding and knowing is that this community has grounded her in the truth more deeply of what she is and what she is capable of being, doing, and expressing as her magnificent divine self. Oh, it's juicy. So Keisha, I know she's going to listen to this message. We just love you and celebrate you so much, dear one. So what we're going to do over the next few weeks is we're going to learn some spiritual practices. We're going to engage in some spiritual practices that are going to support us in saying yes at a deeper level to our transformation. So stay tuned and stay with us. All right, so this week, I just invite you to reflect on some of the ways that you have held yourself back that might be blocking your road to transformation. Just reflect on that, and please be gentle with yourself, because what you're creating is an opening to now step in and say yes to engaging in some spiritual practices that will support you. All right, well, let's affirm together. I choose a life transformed. And let's add a woo-hoo. Woo-hoo! All right.